Welcome back to In Conversation. This is a series where I talk with writers from all different backgrounds at all different stages of publishing to chat about a topic. And today we're talking about feelings of failure in writing. So, you know, all those happy, fuzzy things, though there will be some positive notes to this conversation. So don't get too depressed already. And of course, because this is in conversation, feel free to join the conversation in the comments by posting your experiences with feelings of failure or commenting on anything you see in the video. And today I'm joined by Kess, who I will let introduce herself.
Okay, so I'm Kess Costales. I've been on Liselle's videos a few times if you've been watching those. I'm a Filipino-Canadian author and poet represented by Leslie at the Seymour Agency. So I write poetry and novels. For my novels, I write across age categories and different genres. I'm always exploring new things. I currently have one book out. It's called So Says the Heart. It's my debut poetry collection, and it's currently available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, Book Depository, and you can also buy the PDF or a signed physical copy on Etsy.
Wonderful. And I'm going to have all those links below so you can check that all out. And I did a video with Kess also about her poetry collection. So if you want to learn more about that, one of these sides, the link will be on. I'm not sure which one, but it'll be there.
Okay. Also, this is Duke. He's a little rowdy sometimes, and he is a little bit needy right now.
So Duke is the third guest of this In Conversation. So when was the very first time you dealt with feelings of failure as a writer, and when was the most recent time?
So the first time I felt failure as a writer was before I actually ever finished writing a manuscript. There's a lot about authors. The first time they wrote a book, they were a kid. I was never that person. I didn't like books when I was a kid. I didn't really like them until I was about 12 when I really got into reading. And then it wasn't a little while until after that I started getting into writing. But even then, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to write a whole book. I tried. I failed a couple times, started things, never finished them. And so I felt like it was ridiculous for me to have this dream of writing a book one day. It was like I was just destined to fail. And then, so I had that self-rejection and leading to feel like inevitable failure. Mm-hmm. But eventually I did finish my first manuscript. I finished it when I was in university. And for a while, I was really excited. It was really good. And then you get into querying. And then there's a whole new type of rejection and new feelings of failure when this book you're excited about suddenly isn't getting all the attention you thought it would, and you don't get an agent within an instant.
Yeah.
Which is really hard.
It just builds up. The second you hit one milestone in publishing or writing, you just end up with another mountain in front of you that now you've got to climb that, and it just goes on and on and on. Yeah. And what would you say is your most recent experience with feelings of failure in writing?
So most recently, since I have an agent now, and I've started going on sub, and that's probably where most of my feelings of failure come from. Going on sub, you get the similar feeling to getting into querying, when you get the query trenches, as everybody calls it. It can be really rough. I think some people say submission's easier, some people say it's harder. I think I'm one of those people that I don't know how I feel about submission and if it's easier or harder than the query trenches, in that you do have that validation of having an agent fighting for you and that you're not directly contacting the editors yourself. But at the same time, you've had all that validation from getting an agent and getting to say, I have news, I'm a professional writer with an agent. And then you send your book out to people for the next step of actually selling your book, and then it doesn't sell right away. And so it's just tough to reconcile that rejection with the accomplishments and the fact that you've come so far. It just kind of feels like you're stuck.
Yeah.
And so you start wondering if you're good enough or not, if your writing's good enough or it's you. And it feels, for me, it was really dramatic. It's been really dramatic, and that it's just a lot of self-doubt and feeling stuck. As I said, like, I feel like I'm stagnant. I'm not moving fast enough. I can see people moving along, like they're getting, like they got their agent pretty quickly, and then their book deal quickly afterwards, and then they have other things happening, and it's kind of why I go a little quiet online sometimes. It's hard to talk about it when I'm feeling like I haven't done everything I should have been doing by now. And so it's like the feelings of failure after getting a lot of rejection. It just comes back again and again when you're trying to pursue traditional publishing.
Yeah. And I kind of think that's the hard part about submission, is that, for one, more people are paying attention to you because you've already done this agent announcement. And I think there's a lot of expectation from people that you will eventually sell a book. And that can be a lot of pressure because everyone's looking at you. You're now involving someone else. There's an agent as well that's working with you. And it's also that final step, right? Because it's that final point between you getting the book or not. And I think that can be what makes submission so uniquely difficult. Even though querying sucks, and querying can be so long, but it's almost like querying, you can go back and you could change things and you could submit your book again, and you can go and do this. But with submission, it's a little bit harder to resubmit something. And it's that final step where you're just like, I just want to get to it. And I feel like that's what makes it feel a lot harder.
And for publishing, it always feels like, oh, if I just get to this next step, it'll be a little bit better. But then it's like, so you finished the book, and then you have to get through that. Like, you got through that, now you have to get an agent, and then you have to get through submission. And then after submission, it's like a whole other thing with like marketing and like actually selling copies and like keeping your career and all that stuff that I'm scared to deal with.
Yeah.
I don't have to
Never
worry
ends.
about the business of just, there's always something else that you're going to have to worry about, something else where you're going to have to face rejection and feelings of failure. Like, never really goes away.
Yeah. It just, because there are people that are like New York Times bestselling authors that are still like, I feel sad today about X, or I feel like I failed at X. It literally can go on forever. I'm sure there's some point in time in which Leigh Bardugo is like, I really sucked at this and I failed, even given the huge amount of like popularity and success. I feel like no matter what stage you're at, you're always going to have a point where you feel some sort of failure in some way. So positive, right?
We'll get to the positive. It's fine.
Yeah, the positive will come later. It'll come at the end so you can feel happy at the end. So how much of a role do you find that the publishing industry as a whole and other writers play in your feelings of failure?
The biggest role that's like publishing right now is like, there's so many different parts of it that affects my feelings and like what I feel like a failure, especially when you just can't help but compare yourself and your career to others. Mm-hmm. And like what's happening there. It goes back to the feeling of like, you're not moving fast enough, you're not doing well enough, you're maybe not good enough. And it's hard to keep your eyes on your own work. It's like, there's just so many other things to see, especially when you, like everybody says, find your people, find your group that you can like support you through the journey, because it's a difficult journey. But then you have to look at all these things that are happening. You see people like with news to share, with like progress, and like you can see them having big word counts, or they receive multiple offers of representation from agents, or they sold their book really quickly and their book went to auction, and now they're looking at it for like film and TV, or what do they have now? They have like webtoons.
Oh yeah, webtoons. Which I thought were like actual animated videos, and then they were like comics, and I was like, oh, I was misled.
Yeah. Or like now there's like the video game things too, or
yeah, right? But like it's not Kim Kardashian celebrity, but it's like, what is it called? It's called like Stories or something, but it's those games. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like there's a lot to see, and like if you're not getting anything, it kind of sucks because it's like, well, at least one thing would be nice, right? To say, like it's really hard not to feel like you have to compare yourself to others, and like you start getting envious, and the envy leads to feeling like you failed yourself, you failed your agent, you're failing all the people that were like, yeah, you're gonna sell your book really quickly, you're gonna be amazing, you're gonna be like a best-selling author, and I'm like, I don't have a book out yet.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, when's it out? And I'm like, after I sell it, like 2 years after that.
Yeah. It's hard because people get so excited and they so want you to succeed, but sometimes it's like, I can't sell a book in like a day, or this isn't happening for you. And people are like, it's going to happen at any moment. And that's great. And that can be really uplifting. But sometimes when you're in that space of feeling like a failure, it can just feel like, please stop saying that because it's not happening.
Yeah. Like, I got my first agent through DV Pit, and like with the Twitter pitch events, it's a great opportunity. Like obviously I had a great outcome from it, but it also gets, and then you also get some attention from it. You can connect to more readers, other writers, some more people in the industry. You're networking. It helps with networking. But then it also feels like there's this pressure of like, if you did well for a pitch contest, if you're going to do well on sub,
Yeah. And people were also like messaging you too, to be like, what's happening? Weren't they?
Yeah. Or like I love that people are excited. Like I'm excited for other people too. And like it's a good vibe to have that you're excited for everyone. You can't wait to see their news. But then after like months, and people are like, I can't wait for your news. And you're like, me too.
I would also like that news. Thank you.
Also like to see news.
Yeah.
And then when there's no news and you're like, yeah, I did really well for that part, but now I'm not doing as great as I thought. And so like you just start questioning your work and yourself and progress. And it's like, was it luck? Is it just timing? Is it my skills as a writer? Or like what is it? And I feel like it's just seeing other people and seeing yourself, and you just overthink everything. Like I can't look at Publishers Weekly anymore.
Yeah.
I think like after the first few months of being on sub, I was like, I am never opening Publishers Weekly again until I have a book deal.
Yeah. And I could totally see that. When I was on sub, I was not looking at Publishers Weekly. That was not my thing. I could only look at Publishers Weekly now. But before I was like, I don't care to look at that. When I'm on sub again, I'm sure I will unsubscribe because it's a lot. It's happy news for people, and that's amazing. But when you're in a point where you're going through that and trying to achieve that and it's not happening for you, that is not the time to look at a highlight reel of everyone doing it. That's what I would say. That's the kind of like the feeling of like how publishers or other writers, I think, contribute to when I have feelings of failure. It's because everything is so public. Like you can see everything on social media. You can see when people get agents, when people get book deals, when people get multiple book deals for large sums of money. You can see when people get movie deals, and all that's like great, happy news when you're in the mood for it. But when you're already in a feeling of thinking that you are failing and that you are not doing well and that you are possibly never going to do well as good as those people, that is the time when you don't want to see all that stuff, and when it can be really, not exciting. And publishing just in general, because there are so many different things that contribute to how books are picked up, or which books are made into big splashy titles and which books are mid-list, or which books don't get a lot of push at all. And to me, that can play in a lot to feelings of failure, because it's like starting to wonder, am I important enough for this? Or am I not really going to get anything because I'm not actually that important and my book isn't that good? Or are they going to like this next book I have, or are they going to not care about that story and I'm not good enough and I'm never going to sell anything ever again? So publishing is an
Like
industry.
it can go on.
Yeah.
It's like there's just so much to question and consider. Like it's like just even thinking about the type of books that are being bought right now, or like will be bought soon enough. Like something maybe they're being bought before, but they're not being bought anymore, or like what's on trend? Is it going to be a trend by the time I finish it? Am I writing something that's like worth selling? Am I writing something that's going to sell at all, or
Yeah.
like what is it? There's
Yeah.
just
It's true. Every time
publishing's
I see
fun.
a horror published, I'm like, I've missed the boat. It's too late. I'm never going to finish this book in time. Everybody's going to be tired of horror by the time I have this done. Nobody's going to care. Yeah.
Like thrillers. Oh my god. I'm just like, should I write a thriller? And then I'm like, wait a minute, what if nobody wants thrillers by the time I finish this book?
Yes.
And so
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
kind of the back and forth of like you want to be aware of trends so that you're not writing something that's dead. But then when you're too aware of trends, then it can really affect your writing because you're like, I really want to write this, but now I'm too panicked about this trend to do it. So I will say in the same like vein of like looking at the accomplishments of like, or looking at publishers and looking at the accomplishment of other writers, the accomplishments of other writers at least sometimes can feel really uplifting and hopeful, and I can actually feel a lot better and a lot less like a failure seeing someone succeed, especially when it's, you know, I'm trying to, like when I was trying to like push a genre mix and a genre mix got published, then it was so exciting and I felt so hopeful and renewed and less like a failure because I was like, okay, like maybe this will be okay. And so other writers in that way I found can end up being uplifting and kind of dispelling of feelings of failure. Publishing never. Publishing never does the opposite. But other writers and their work and what gets picked up for them can sometimes be helpful.
yeah, like I find that I go through phases where sometimes I'm just very resentful and bitter and angry, and I'm like, they sold a book, but I didn't. And we have like the same thing. Oh shit,
Yeah.
we have the same thing. And then it's like, oh yeah, we sold the same thing. Yes, that means I can sell mine. Or it's like, oh well, I just like I'm like up and down with
Yeah.
it.
It can happen so easily because I remember when we went to a book launch for Joanne Hathaway's book and we were there and I was on submission and
Yeah, me too.
my now editor had bought a book from Ashley Shuttleworth. You should also check that out. And it was set in Toronto and it was an urban fantasy. And I was like, it's fucking over for me. I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way she's going to buy it. I was like, she's not going to buy 2 Toronto urban fantasy. It's not going to happen. That's bullshit. It's never going to occur. And then
it did.
And then it did. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was up back and forth. So sometimes I'd be like, she's never going to buy it because she just bought that. And sometimes I'd be like, oh, maybe because she bought that, she'll also buy this. But so I understand that back and forth. How do you try and get over feelings of failure and get into a better place? This is the positive part.
So for this, like the first thing I do is just share these feelings. Like I don't hold it in when I'm not feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
Like I talk to my first agent a lot during sub of how sad I am and how stressed I am, and I'm like, please sell my book, buy my book. And so like I was always like on a weekly basis, I was just like
Yeah.
I'm sad. I need comfort. And then like I have like my writer friends that I can talk to and like figure things out with, and like it helps to have someone who understands what you're going through, or at least like supports you and can make you feel better, or like can cheer you on. Like it can make a huge difference when you just after getting stuck in your own head for a little while. And so like that's always what I do first. Like even as an introvert, it's very important. Because like we're social people for the most part, and especially as like an introvert, you get stuck in your own head, and just letting it out there. It's like the same thing as therapy, like getting to talk about your feelings and to understand them and figure them out and figure out how to deal with them. Like that's so important for just not just for overcoming your feelings of failure, but for your self-care. Because that feelings of failure can blow up into something much bigger, especially as someone with depression and anxiety. Like, I'm very prone to my negative thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're getting rejections or getting nothing at all, like not getting any responses, like those feelings build up, and you don't want to get stuck in your own head. Because then you could really get stuck in there, and those thoughts feel like they're real as opposed to just a feeling, like a temporary feeling.
Yeah.
Um, but also to like stay focused on your own work. Like, don't. It's really hard to not compare yourself to others. Like I'm always comparing myself to other people, and so I try to avoid that by looking at things I've accomplished so far. Like when I was in sub, like, so I haven't sold the book yet, but I've written another book, and I read another book. I've been going to events. I've been reading more craft books. I've been reading more books in general. And so it's always just thinking about my own work and how I can fix that, or like new ideas I can play with, and just thinking about always moving ahead as opposed to thinking about how I'm stuck. Like, there's a lot of things that you can't control in publishing, and then so instead of feeling like a failure, it's thinking about the things that you can do to feel like you have accomplished. And it doesn't have to be big things all the time. It could be like expanding your vocabulary. It could be like reading a different genre, or like reading nonfiction if you only read fiction, stuff like that. Yeah. And also get some non-writing hobbies. Like, do something not related to publishing at all. And that's always good.
Yeah, I think that can be really helpful, doing something that's unrelated to what is making you feel like a failure and getting out of that realm so you can kind of concentrate on something different to help you out. I
Something
do,
positive.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you always have to challenge your negative thinking and focus on the positives instead. It's like, if you catch yourself having those horrible thoughts of like, oh, I'm a failure, I failed in this industry, like I suck. It's like, if you catch yourself doing it and you're able to recognize it, then like fight against that. Like, instead of thinking about that, be like, okay, but I've done this. Like, I wrote a whole book. I wrote a new genre. I wrote a really good chapter. I wrote a really good scene. It's like, or like when you write something really good and you make someone cry
Mm-hmm.
because like they're like emotionally impacted by it. Like, that's a great thing, and
Yeah,
that's something nice to focus on too. And so it's like, instead of being stuck and just stuck in those feelings of failure and feeling like you failed, think about the good things you do,
yeah,
because like you're pursuing the dream of being published, and that's not an easy thing to do. And
yeah,
so you gotta look at it from the bright side. You gotta think about all the great things you're doing and the great things you will do and all that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I would agree with that. Like, really thinking about things you've accomplished so far is definitely something that I do to help me get out of that, because it helps me kind of get back into that mindset, especially when I think of where I was at earlier stages. I'll think of like when I was doing my second book and I was querying for 2 years on and off while I kept writing and rewriting, and how hard that was. And I'll think about how different it was during that time versus when I was able to get an agent finally. And I'll think about doing that accomplishment, or even back when I was like in high school and I was writing short stories and I kept trying to finish this one book and I really couldn't do it. And the difference between like now finishing my first book finally and now I like have drafted my fifth book, and how far apart that is, and how like much progress has been made in between, so that even when I'm at the stage that I'm already in and I'm trying to achieve something more, I can always remember all those times before where I didn't even think I would make it that far, and like be proud of yourself for what you've done thus far. And that's it for this session of In Conversation. Thank you so much to Kess for coming on and joining me. All her information about her books and her socials are down below, so check them out. And of course, feel free to join the conversation in the comments. What feelings of failure have you experienced throughout your writing career or experience, and what brought them on, and how did you try and overcome them? So we're ending on a positive note. And of course, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to me already, please subscribe below. I post on a now weekly basis. And thank you so much for checking out this video. Bye.